You can't deny the fact that rugby is most definitely a sport that exists, and is a game where 30 scary men try to kill each other over an inflatable egg. But rugby started out a bit different in the 5th century BC in Rome, where we can find its earliest form, harpasto. It involved 2 teams, had something similar to scrums, but the aim of the game was to keep the ball on your side of the pitch for as long as possible. And then 2,300 years later, a young boy decided to pick up a ball while playing a game that wouldn't formally exist for 40 more years, and rugby as we know it was formed. But I think I can do better. So here we go, Rugby 2. So to start, we're going to give the number 8 an actual name. Calling them the number 8 might work fine for the starting team, but it's kinda weird when the sub comes on and is wearing the number 19. So I've come up with a new name that perfectly encapsulates the players in that position, the wannabe back. You know, they spend half the game in the backfield and are always trying weird offloads. We all know that's what they actually want to be. And on top of that, hooker is a very politically incorrect term to use for the number 2. So I've decided we shall refer to them as the front row of the night from now on. The next position is the centres. In the Northern Hemisphere, we call them inside and outside centres. And in the Southern Hemisphere, you call them something like 1/5 over 17/8 or something like that. I don't know. But this is rugby. We don't do maths in rugby. The only thing that we use our heads for is hitting someone else's shoulder to get them sent off. The 12 will now be renamed to the lie half, because they all think they can play 10, but we all know they can't. And if you're 12, deep down, you know it too. The 13 will be named after the best 13 to play the game. Just a master of his craft, and will follow in the footsteps of other great sports players like Johan Cruyff and Antonin Panenka, in having an aspect of a sport being named after them. So I hereby introduce the new name of the outside centre, the DeLuca. Just what this man could do with the ball in his feet, just exquisite. And now onto the rules. And yes, we're calling them rules. So as you can see, my counters here kind of blend in with the pitch. So because of this, every Rugby 2 pitch will now be blue. Player welfare being a big problem in the current game, we're going to reduce the game length to be 69 minutes.
Nice.
Because I don't understand the fancy magic they use to make the clock graphics work, I've also decided that the timer that we use during this game will be the one that speedrunners use, like this. And we will stick to 15 aside on a pitch, for now. I'll come back to this later. Point scoring won't change, except for one new way of scoring points in the game will be introduced. To go back to the roots within Harpastum, the team with the most ball time in their half gets an extra 10 match points. And also, because I don't like the mark rule, whenever you call for a mark, you have to take a kick at goal. But get this, every time you miss a kick at goal, the other team gets the points. Being allowed to kick at goal from the mark means that it's now a penalty, not a free kick. And penalties must be taken within 17.85 seconds of the penalty being awarded. Except for Bernard Foley, he can take as long as he wants. Oh, and there also must be a resident Scot in the crowd to boo at this moment. Penalties are given for a myriad of reasons, one of which is offside. Now, considering no one really knows what offside is in rugby, especially referees, am I right, Italians? So I've decided to just not have it. Remember that Italy versus England game from a few years ago? That shit was mental. Let's make that the norm. Now, there's many punishments that come along with penalties, like yellow and red cards. I've decided, since all the hoopla going around these cards, games goes off, that we will do without reds, and instead there will be a duel between the infringing player and the offending player, and whoever wins stays on. Now, we're going to need someone to make sure these laws, I think you'll find they're rules, not laws. Anyway, we need someone to enforce these rules, and we all know referees are useless and don't know anything about rugby, so I've opted to not have any and go TMOs only, and we'll have like 12 of them, because that couldn't go horribly wrong at all, could it? And it will only be French directors who can be in charge of broadcasting. Oh, and while we're at broadcasting, Clive Woodward must do punditry on every game. One thing these TMOs will have to manage is the forward pass, and as no one seems to understand Newton's laws of motion, I've decided that backwards out of the hands isn't good enough anymore. It must go 100% backwards. Any sideways or forward movement will immediately result in a scrum. Speaking of which, all 14 players other than the scrum half must be in the scrum, and scrums must take exactly 3 minutes and 22 seconds. Oh, and of course every scrum half must be Greg Laidlaw, because he's the greatest rugby player ever, and this conversation will stop right here. So remember earlier when I said we would come back to the team numbers? Well, that's this bit. I couldn't think of a segue. But anyway, my idea to open up the game more as it goes on is that every 20 minutes a player gets taken off from each side, meaning that going beyond the 69 minutes, each player will have 12 players. And speaking of going beyond the 69 minutes, when the clock is in the red, either captain can claim next tries the winner, regardless of points difference. meaning you can be 22 points behind and call it, then score and win. Now that's a rule every PE teacher would be proud of. That's how we deal with the end of the game, but before kickoff in an international fixture, you would sing your anthem. Now I think this is getting a bit tedious and boring, so I've decided to make it mean something. My new rule is that you don't sing your national anthem, but the national anthem of the last team that beat you until you beat them again. They also stack, so if you lose 10 games in a row, guess what? You're singing 10 national anthems before kickoff. Oh yes, and of course the most important rule is we're going to kick rugby out of the Six Nations. If you like this, I think you'll like this video right here too. Thanks for watching.